So you started off in education,
Hmm.
right? I know you have a
Yes,
doctor in
I
ed.
did. I taught special education and general education. I worked a lot in high school. High school was my favorite. I've also taught some elementary and some middle school. I really loved my high schoolers. Um, I just liked seeing them grow and work with them. I taught a lot of what we used to call resource classes, English, resource specialist, and
hmm
resource
hmm
lab, which was kind of a period of body doubling in a way.
hmm
Um, and so I worked with so many of those students. And as time went on and we had the pandemic and things like that, I just started to feel more like I wanted to be able to work outside of it and work with other things. And as I found out more and more about women and what we're going through, I wanted to work with them. I still work with students some, you know, but yeah, working in the classroom, seeing it, seeing, and at the time, and still, most of my students were boys. I would have girls every once in a while, but most of my students were boys. And I took me a while to figure out why I understood them so well.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm wondering, since you bring up gender, I'm wondering if do you find that ADHD shows up differently for boys than girls, men, women?
That's always a good question. I think in certain ways, yes, but I also think that sometimes maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. You know, you have
Hmm.
the inattentive, you have the hyperactive, impulsive, and you have the combined. And it may be that more girls are either inattentive or are kind of masked down into the inattentive, and more
hmm
boys are given that outward ability to be more impulsive and hyperactive outside of their brain.
hmm
And so I don't know how much of it is boy girl and how much of it is societal boy girl. I know that it's not correct to really say that inattentive are not hyperactive because often it's inside their brains that they're thinking a million miles an hour and all the thoughts, and that's why they seem inattentive because they're thinking all these other things, especially if what's in front of them isn't challenging or interesting.
hmm
Like we were talking about before, I think so much of it is still the past research and the past way of looking at things, and even with doctors and teachers and parents and society, and the grandparents say this. The the knowledge about ADHD, I think, is stuck. The general knowledge is stuck in the past, and
hmm
I think people have some very specific ideas about it that aren't always correct.
Yeah, I gotcha. So how would you describe, let's say, I'm sure you've done this plenty of times, but let's say you're trying to explain to a parent, okay, your kid's being tested for ADHD. What does that, parent says, what does that mean? What is ADHD? Like, how can we explain it to either clients or loved ones when we're trying to assess for something like this?
Well, that's hard because it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's about attention, but it's not necessarily about a lack of attention. It's about where the attention's going. So in class or in a conversation with my partner, it may not be going where they want it to go. I have attention.
Mm-hmm.
I can pay attention. It's just where you are paying attention. And so then if I'm talking to a parent about their child, it's wanting to figure out, are they having issues with this and is it impacting them in their school? And if it is, what kind of strategies? Because you want them to learn, you want them to grow up and be able
Mm-hmm.
to manage it. Is it impacting in social situations? What kinds? Um, sometimes students with ADHD, even adults, do really well in very structured sports, where like you have to be paying attention to that game,
Mm-hmm.
or like I liked running and swimming because I also didn't have to pay it. I mean, you have to pay attention. You have to not drown
Right.
or fall, but I don't have to worry about a ball coming at me.
Right. Right.
So I think it's about looking at where the attention is strong and where it needs a little bit of support, and how impactful that is, and how to best help the student learn and go through school and then learn to become a happy, useful adult.
Mm-hmm.
Just not productive, like we have to be productive, but just, live their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not be too tripped up by the challenges, right? So I love what you said about
Right.
like the whole attention thing. Like it's the difference between being in the activities and rooms and having demands that require like switching of attention versus having the ability to hyper focus your attention, right?
Hmm.
And so it kind of sounds like those with ADHD would do better to be intentional about the commitments they make and strategic in a way where they're in a position to then show their strengths, not their weaknesses,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.